Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sketchwave. If you're new here and you've not been to the channel before, this is our weekly show where we talk all things digital art because we are both digital artists here on YouTube, primarily in the Procreate space. My name is Joel, otherwise known as JoelCreate, and his name, my co-host, is the one and only James Julier. James, how are you doing?
Very good, man. Yeah, very good. I'm currently looking after a poorly boy at home. He's off with a bit of a tummy bug, so he's somewhere in the background. But yeah, a good week. I've been doing some traditional art for a change as well. I've not given
I
up on the
saw that.
digital. Yeah, a couple of people raising concerns, saying, "Oh no, you're not giving up the digital." That will never happen. But yeah, it's nice to mix it up with a bit of traditional too. How about yourself?
Well, I went the other way. I've been releasing content that is not traditional in any sense, and it's been AI orientated. Uh, it's been fun. It's been fun. I've been getting a lot of. It splits people in half sometimes, 50-50. I've had some interesting videos that I've made on my Instagram, and it's just fun. For me, it's always still fun. It's good to listen to other people's opinions, and they can differ from your own, and that's fine. It's okay to agree to disagree, as they say on all these types of topics.
Absolutely.
But other than that, it doesn't affect me in any way. I've been enjoying my work. I released a marble wallpaper tutorial on
Yeah,
the channel
I
last
saw
week, which
that.
is pretty good. And then followed that up with a video where I created a brush using Chat GPT. Um, so made a Procreate brush using instructions from Chat GPT. Very interesting how it worked. I was actually just shocked in general that it actually knew enough about Procreate to be like, yeah, do this setting, this setting, this setting, and this setting. Duplicate the flat brush in order to make the brush, and so on. But it split opinions, and I think it was just a very cool experiment. I do have a follow up video coming soon. I'm not going to say any more than that. I'll just keep it at that. I'll tease it a little bit, but a follow up video in a different direction, maybe to the first one. But
Very
as
cool.
our viewers will be able to see, today we have another deep dive episode. So if you're new here, we've done a deep dive already on my co host, of course, James. But we are expanding that beyond just us for now, where we're going to start to get guests on for the deep dive series, where we just get to know them, everything about what they do, whether they are creators in our space or otherwise, other type of entrepreneurs in our space. We want to expand it beyond just creators. So today we are joined by Marc Tuinier, who is the CEO of PenTips. It's a fantastic interview and so much goes into it. So
Mm.
enjoy today's episode and let's get into the interview. Marc, thank you so much for joining us on the Sketchwave. I really appreciate it. You are our first guest as well on the show. So thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it. For people that don't necessarily know who you are, do you want to give us a bit of a background on yourself as well as a little bit of a background of yourself prior to starting PenTips?
Of course. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on as well. It's awesome seeing your videos, to getting to collaborate you, to now sitting in a virtual studio together. That's also a part of this journey, I guess. It's
Yeah.
very, very fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. So my journey started off in 1995 in France. I was born in France to my parents. They're both dairy farmers. They had a dairy farm there. After moving away from the Netherlands to France, and around the age of 5, I moved to Texas in the United States, and that's where I grew up until I was about 15. Again on a dairy farm, but I was the only kid who didn't really want to do anything with animals or farming. I mean, I love cats now, so I have two of those, but I had no cows, and that was just not my thing. I loved computers, I loved music, I loved writing music as well, uh, anything like that. Nothing much with cows. And then after about 10 years, 11 years there, a few years after the crash of 2008, also our family was affected by it, and we moved out back to Europe. So we started a new life here. And when I arrived in the Netherlands, I did high school. I couldn't speak the language. So I had to redo that year of high school. So make new friends after making new friends when I was 15. And eventually found myself a job working at the local Apple store. And that was something I really loved to
Wow.
do. Became
Oh,
a
cool.
fan. Yeah, already had the fandom. Now I got to go preach to other people, like preaching gospel at that age. And kept that love of technology throughout my studies. And just a few years ago, we started off with PenTips, and now I'm sitting here with you guys in the virtual studio. So that's a
Fantastic.
short background.
Brilliant. Do you have any background in art at all?
Not painting. If you would consider music an art, yes, but
Yeah,
not
sure.
nothing with the stylus.
Right.
Do you know? I feel like you're missing out on a few videos there. I can see the titles on YouTube. Former Apple employee starts company PenTips. That's a great video. I can see that. That's maybe one for your
Well,
your
yeah,
media team.
that's exactly where the idea kind of came from. It's like, yeah, I was working with the Apple Pencil and I dropped it, and
Hmm.
I still love them, but they didn't count it under warranty. And I'm like, what pencil can you use that doesn't work after you drop it? So I thought a protection mechanism would work, and then it turns out that when I worked with my friends on it to just see what they thought of the product, they were like, "Whoa, this thing gives me so much more feeling when I draw." And I was like,
Sure, yeah.
I I think we got something here.
Yeah.
That's cool. That leads me in nicely to like how the origin story of PenTips, like the very sort of start of it. How did that process come about? You mentioned there about sort of sampling with friends. Talk me through sort of that process at the very beginning, and getting things going really.
By that time, I had tried 9 other startups. So I'd already tried quite a lot of things, ranging from business to business software as a service to a couple of fashion brands. I tried one e-commerce stint, but that was back in the fidget spinner hype. Worked a little bit, but I was too young. I didn't really know what I was doing. But when the pen tips idea came, I was in a room and we were working on the last startup before that one, and I dropped my pencil during a moment of flair. I swung my iPad around like, this is what we should be doing. Like, this would be awesome. And then my Apple Pencil like lost the magnetic connection, dropped on the ground on the tip,
No.
and it rendered the entire thing useless. So
Yikes.
it's like, yeah, as a student having to pay 130 euros for one of these things, I was like,
Yeah.
no. Then Apple said, nope, we're not, this isn't covered under warranty. So I was like, okay, well, let's see if I can make a protective case for it. And yeah, like Joel just said, we went, I worked with, I went to the business to business portal to work with China, and we found tons of manufacturers who could make things like this. I found one who could help me make a tip for the top of it. We could slip it on top. And when I had those first prototypes come back out, I handed them over to friends who worked with Apple Pencil, but they were illustrators. But in my head, they were everybody was just working with an Apple Pencil,
Hmm.
and their use case was particularly interested in the friction part of
Yes.
it, and that really is the origin, like how the idea came to place. I thought it would be covering, turns out it was feeling, and
Yeah.
so
Did you
much
go
more
through
fun.
many iterations then at the beginning? Was there like, did you go through like multiple kind of prototypes of it?
Yeah, but it was very little. I think later products got a lot more prototypes, but in the first one it was 3 or 5. It really was playing with the thickness of the tip as well as the texture, so the type of
Mm.
silicon that we would use. I still have the very, very first ones, and they were so extremely slippery that, yeah, the drag just flooped them off the moment you were
Yeah.
sketching. Very flimsy.
Very cool. And so you've got other products now as well, haven't you? It's not just the actual pen tips. So what was the kind of the window of time between that initial product and then your kind of subsequent ideas?
Roughly, I think 6 months,
Right. Okay.
6 to 9 months. So just a few quarters after it. Like in the first 6 months of pen tips, I was just doing it through with my room, and
Yeah.
I was sitting in the basement and licking all the postage stamps and putting them on the packages. At a certain point, I bought a printer thingy that would do that, and I was like, "Wow, this is mind blowing." And then slowly, I asked a friend of mine. I was like, "Hey, can you help me pack this? Because this is running out of hand, and I think I can work better than on the marketing." And he helped me out, and couldn't have done it without him. And eventually, we were just lugging bags to the local post office with all the packages in there. But it took about 6 months to get from the first product, once we were more established on the market, let's say in early 2021,
Mhm.
to the glove.
Very
Awesome.
cool.
And then there's always this transition period, isn't there, at the very beginning where you're like a one man team and you're doing as much as possible. And then you have to, what they sort of say, cut off an arm, don't you, and give it to somebody else to do and sort of grow the team. I can see at the minute, I think you've got 11 employees, including yourself at the team. How quickly did the team grow? Because obviously you mentioned you got a friend involved sort of at the beginning. did they stay with you for a start, or were they fed up of putting stamps on envelopes? But how quickly did the team grow?
The team grew fast,
Mm,
in the sense that within 4 months of having the timeline not all too exact, but let's say it was October 2020 when I decided I would stop my former job, and then I would go full time on this.
wow.
And uh, so I that's when the first person also joined. And then in December we had already moved to an office, so I moved out of my apartment to an office of 2020, and that's when I also had two people who were just students here help me out with the logistics on top of the person that already had it. And then 1 month or 2 months after, we started with marketing and customer service. So I think we were at five people within half a year after really getting the feet onto the ground.
Mm.
Wow, that's so cool. And being in 2020, I'm assuming then a lot of the growth of the company would have somewhat been like, I guess, quite rapidly. The growth would have been quite rapid because of so many people that joined the Procreate space at that time. I know
Yeah.
I referred to it at one point as that everybody had like a purchase in the COVID time that just made life a little bit easier for them and whatever it was, or just gave them an escape of some sort. And for a lot of people, including myself, it was an iPad and then obviously a pencil as well. And then I think so many people, the Procreate bubble, I don't know if that was necessarily the largest it has ever been or will ever be, but for you, that must have been a rapid amount of growth because of just so many more people adopting the hobby.
Had nothing to compare it to, but it was fast.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, we started just in the midst of it, of course. And then you also notice the trends of people taking more time at home, more leisure time, also because people wouldn't go outside or couldn't, uh, in some cases. Yeah, you go grab an iPad and you explore your art there. So it was there was a miraculous amount of speed in the
Hmm.
e-commerce growth in general, and I think we were a part of that.
Was there any particular moments where it just seemed to, explode in success, or have there been any kind of real success moments that you can look back on and think, yeah, that was a pivotal point?
Uh, I actually think it was rather gradual. Like it
Yeah.
went fast, but it was no huge bumps. I would actually say the opposite, being that when it grew so fast, it got out of hand was in March of 2021. Um, I was pushing so much more on the advertising because the numbers were all green that at a certain point, when the numbers started going less green, they start they just kind of sloped. I didn't have the money anymore to be able to buy all the inventory that we needed to
Yikes.
push through.
Yeah.
So that's when we requested another loan as well, and that was in the period of March to April, May,
Right.
that we fulfilled everybody. I made sure everybody was also paid on time. We got through it, but it was a very tumultuous period in being able to buy the cost of goods sold, not having the cost of the goods, not being able to have the relationship yet with the suppliers to say, hey, I'll pay on delivery or give me a few extra days. No, it's like pay now, wait a few weeks until we make your product, and then we move on to the next phase.
Yeah, I imagine the struggles of starting a business, especially with that level of growth. The things that pop up, there must be so many things to juggle at this sort of early stage in a normal business. But when you're getting so much growth, as well as sort of awareness as well, because myself, I think James as well, other creators have all picked up the product and have all made videos on it on YouTube. And to have so many creators get hold of that, one must be amazing, but at the same time must be like, if the demand gets any higher, what do we do kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was very interesting in that time. We managed it. We built a team around it, and that's also what accelerated the growth that you were just talking about as well.
How have you
Yeah.
found sort of separating the jobs then as a sort of an entrepreneur and giving them things to other people such as marketing and so on? Because a lot of the time that's one of the biggest struggles to let go and let somebody else do it. Yes, you can train them to sort of speak in your voice as a company and the vibe that you want to go for with your marketing, but that can be quite tricky, can't it, at the sort of early stages?
Yeah, we had those hurdles too. Like I had in the beginning, I was doing the customer service. I was also doing the advertisements, all of that kind of great stuff, and it was kind of just my expression through the brand. And then when you take on new people, everybody has a new tone of voice that they kind of mix into it. And when it's so young, you don't have the track record yet to be like, oh, but this is PenTips. So that's something that we still struggle with, but it gets better every single day. And being able to decide what you give out of hands, it starts with the fundamental things like making sure that a job like logistics is executed. That's a pretty self explaining step to take. And then the marketing was a bit challenging, but what you notice is at a certain point, I got my hands in a little bit of everything that I can't do one thing very well anymore. And the person that we hired then, Emma is her name, she's still with us. Um, she was also a digital artist, and she loved the product. She loved the industry and the community. So that was, and she loved digital marketing. So I was like, "Hello, would you like to help me?" And she was like, "Sure."
That's perfect, especially having somebody with that in that space to also then just be able to be like, "Do you like this?" You know, just hand it over to them, and be like, "What do you think? Give me some feedback here and now." You know, that's
Mhm.
ideal. Let's move then to the current day of PenTips. At the
Yeah.
minute, the product catalog has grown so much. Like when I look at the site now, you know, you've got the original PenTips, PenTips 2, which I think were rebranded at some point, and yet you've got the ink. Fiber as well, and another mystery product on the horizon as well. But not just that, like the growth of pen tips has gone beyond just the actual tips themselves. You've got your pen mats, your the shortcuts accessory as well. Yeah, how for one, like I find it really interesting how you then how do you go about moving into those additional sort of products around pen tips? Because obviously it's really cool that you've expanded the range of the tips, but then to dive into a slightly different product, you know, that takes you almost have to start again, really, I guess.
For which product would be slightly different?
Well, I guess the pen mat to start with, because for you, obviously, like they link together, but the pen mat being a very different product, you know, there's so many factors that go into these screen covers, whether it's an adhesive one that you stick on straight away, or you went down the magnet route, you know, all these different options, and then I presume as well thicknesses of the screen covers alongside the texture as well, because I find this one of the trickiest things to try and explain in our space is the difference in these paper screen covers that have these tiny, it's almost like sandpaper texture to them, but they are different, and it's very hard to explain that. So again, yeah, you expanding into like a pen mat. Did that feel like you were just starting again and having to curate this new product from scratch, and then maybe even go through iterations of that in a prototype stage?
It had its challenges. I think where we where it came from is something I still do is everybody who orders and gets a feedback request email from me. And that one, if you answer it, it comes directly back into my mailbox. It doesn't like I still don't know why not everybody does this, but it allows me to communicate directly with the people who actually love it or hate it. And a big point of feedback that we got before that is also constantly asking like what kind of things should we introduce? Do you see things out in the market that you wish were different?
Sure.
And one of the big opportunities that we learned from our customers was, yeah, we love paper screen protectors. We don't like that it distorts the screen quality. It's such a beautiful iPad screen. Why do I have to distort it? Is there not a way that we can like take it off and on? And then we worked with, again, our suppliers to see if we could build that together. And yeah, now we have one that has more of like a riptide, so it has a little bit more suction to it. And before that, it was magnetic, meaning that you could just take it on and off and place it as you used to and still have that both aspects of that product, paper screen protector and a beautiful screen.
Yeah, and I can see from the site as well, you've not only expanded into, say, different products, sort of different services as well. You've got courses, brushes. You know, was that something, was that one of your own ideas, or was that part of the team in terms of just providing almost like a hub for all things that if somebody was brand new to the space, they just got the Apple Pencil and an iPad, they can come to the site and there's so much resource there alongside product as well.
Well, this is one of this thing of like creating a hub and becoming a bigger space. I find this interesting predominantly from the building a company journey together, like all of us. At a certain point, you're with, like, yeah, we'll say 10 people, 11 people. Then they're also trying to find direction. The company's called PenTips, so there's not much space to interpret what we do. and at the same time, we want to have more than just like we want to do more than just sell a pen tip. So what are we actually trying to achieve together? And this is something that is also great with working with the digital art community, is that we want to make it easier and nicer to create digital art. And with that idea, it came clear to us that we should also expand into new products, whether that is working together with collaborators to make unique brushes, or creating tutorials and content to help people on their way to go
Sure.
from an amateur to a professional amateur or a professional. Yeah, it was. It's a nice evolution to see, not just going from a product to offering a range of ways for people becoming better at what they love to do.
That's
So
awesome.
when Apple, for example, announces changes to their products, so if you know you've had the recent change to the higher
Yes.
tier end of the Apple, sorry, the iPad Pros with their kind of anti-glare screen. What were your initial thoughts on that, and how do you feel about that when you hear the news? Do you hear the news presumably along with the rest of us, or do you have
Yes. Yeah.
any?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we don't get any shortcuts.
no,
We're not at the level of Procreate yet.
yet,
But
yeah,
yeah, what happened there is that um, we got we just watch it, and we hope that there's not a brand new tip that just like
yeah,
obliterates everything that we've done. But so far
yes,
we've been good, and we try to stay on top of it as well. What is fortunate is that Apple seems to just reiterate the pencil around the tip, so the tip kind of stays the same. But we are following patents. That's
yeah,
probably the only gateway that we have a bit that might seem earlier to the general public. Not that we get access to patents earlier, we get the feed in as soon as they're declared anywhere in the world. And
mm,
very exciting things that they seem to be working on are pen tips with little optical sensors in the tip to be able to extract colors from the real
yes.
world,
I've
for
heard this.
example,
Yeah,
and creating haptic feedback. But also with the new Apple Pencil Pro, they're already on a step there. When you tick it, it
yeah.
manages to give you a haptic feedback. Now imagine that, the bristle effect going through the pencil as you're we're
Does that?
to answer your question, we watch it with anticipation, and we
Yeah,
hope
of course. Yeah.
it.
I mean, does it fill you with anxiety in that sense, or do you just, I guess you can adapt whatever the
Yeah,
situation, can't you?
it's a good excitement. I mean, that's one of the it would be a downside to being an accessory company, is like if the product you make the accessories for changes course or decides to stop,
Mm,
uh, you have a you have difficult choices to make then as a
yeah.
company. And at the same point, I like the excitement. It's like, okay, throw something new at us. Let's see how we get through this one. It's fun.
Have you had chance to try out the iPad Pro with the anti-glare screen? Have you had chance to see it in person? Because I've
Yes,
still
this
not.
past
Yeah.
weekend.
Right.
Yeah,
So it doesn't have a texture as such, does it? So it won't tick any of the same boxes that your products do anyway. Um,
no.
in terms of your pen tips and your screen protector, it doesn't provide that experience, does it? So fortunately for yourself, at this current state, it's not a threat, is it? So that's great.
Yeah, it is. I remember when it came out, and as you might know, we have people in the industry that are really reliant on making sure that the paper feeling is given to the iPad. We're
Yeah.
fortunate to have different solutions to that
Mm.
problem that we solve for customers. And I also was like, oh man, what's happening here? What's this gonna do to us all? And then after trying it out and learning more about the product, and when the reviews came out, we are like, okay, it does have anti-glare, but it doesn't create any feeling at
No,
all. You'd
no.
still want a screen protector.
I went into the Apple store recently and I messed around with the latest iPads, and I hadn't yet had a chance to experience the new Apple Pencil. And that squeeze feature, that's witchcraft, because it feels like you're moving the pencil. It feels like it's
Yeah,
Yes.
flexing under your finger,
definitely.
but nothing moves. And I had to give it to my wife. And I was like, right, feel this and squeeze this. I was like, you do realize nothing's moved there? You're like, no, that can't be true. And I'm like, no, nothing has changed here. Like, you are literally just, I don't, magic. It's absolute magic. Um,
Yeah.
when you think about sort of the future of pen tips, then we kind of touched on it a little bit there. Where do you see the company going? I mean, in terms of not only where do you see the company going, but like, have you got any sort of new products that are on the horizon?
Absolutely. Yeah, first, so back to the haptic thing, it reminds me of the technology that they put in the trackpad.
Yeah.
It's very
Mm.
similar to that, where it doesn't click, but it feels like it. You're like, when are you clicking?
I
And
said
that's
this in
the
a previous episode that when my Mac if I push my Mac too hard and it starts to freeze and I get the beach ball, you click your trackpad and nothing happens anymore because the whole system's frozen. Even the haptics has
yeah,
stopped, and you're like, wait, this usually clicks. Why is this not
Yeah.
clicking? And then you realize, oh my god, this doesn't move either. It's amazing.
yep. It's beautiful. Very excited to see where they come. Also, another patent I saw rolling around was that they are actually working with bristles in the tip, so they would be able to. Um, This is also recent, but now you have the iPad where you have one line over, right? And then they have a different tip that they could put on it that'll give the effect of a
Found
hundred
out
bristles
bristles. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
over it. So you would
Wow.
really get that feeling on your iPad. Oh,
That would be seriously game changing for a lot of kind of painterly type painters, because I'm not really that kind of artist, and for me, a single point like a pencil is perfect. But for some people who really are expressive and like that brush, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I can imagine that working with Adobe in the Fresco app because they've got the live brushes. And if you were to utilize that in there to a deep degree, like, actually fully integrated, wow, like the watercolor brushes and stuff like that and the oil paint. Yeah, I can imagine now you've said that a whole sort of series or set of different brush types
There's a lot of
for the
money
Apple
there.
Pencil. Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
yeah.
for, I don't want the bill though. If they're going to
No,
send it, that's
no.
fine.
You want to be the producer, the seller of them, don't you? Definitely not the purchaser.
Yeah, we've tried to go into that direction because the technology inside of the tip, it's because it's not just the tip, there's also little small spring mechanism in the top that also and a little ball that makes sure that when you are actually on the iPad, it manages the orientation as well as the tilt.
Right. So this
We
is an
have
area
looked
we
into.
know nothing about, really. We
Oh,
we use
Yeah,
it.
this
We
is
know the
really
art side,
fascinating.
yeah, but we know
Very
nothing about
interesting.
the actual internal workings of the Apple Pencil. So yeah, I shouldn't interrupt you. I
okay.
should just listen.
No. Here's a speed course.
Yes.
So when if you grab an Apple Pencil, and we're looking here at a product I'll talk a little bit more about in a little bit.
Hmm.
It's when you have the Apple Pencil tip, the outside is usually plastic, or in our cases, sometimes silicon. And then if you look on the inside, sometimes you can see a little shiny
Yeah.
silver type of bubble. That there is essentially a much smaller version of the tip. So it's a tip inside the tip. And that tip has roughly three components, of which the middle component is a spring. So it pushes the pressure through to that piece here on the top.
Right.
And at the same time, the curvature of the tip on the inside is very important to the working. That's why a lot of uh, other brands that seem to make similar products, they don't always work as well because they probably didn't do that correctly. But the curvature of that is really important to get the exact tilt on the screen absolutely right. So the way
Right.
that shape is and how it's covered by the outside, how much distance there is between the magnets and or the inside tip and the outside tip is all very important for the working of the Apple Pencil tip. So what we've tried to do as well is to try and, yeah, I don't know if I'm disclosing anything probably, but it won't work, at least not the way that we're looking at it, is putting a bunch of those different inside tips together and trying to recreate that bristle feeling. It's very challenging. It's very challenging.
Yeah, that is
We're
an
looking,
extreme level of innovation.
But
it
it
would
must
be
have been
crazy if we could do it.
a big step up from, because initially it was just the covers, wasn't it? And then you've obviously got the replaceable nib. So that must have been a giant leap of investing time and money just to get the research element on that. There must have been a huge difference between those two products.
Yeah, the amount of prototyping we did and going into PenTips too, and I would say that's like the upgrade of the main product.
Mm.
You went from what is now PenTips Lite. PenTips Fiber is absolutely great if you don't want to go for the PenTips 2, the 2 Plus. But the 2, when we launched it on Kickstarter, I would say was the biggest moment. That's coming back to an earlier question in our being PenTips. Organically, we benefited greatly off of it. There were a lot of people that were very happy, and there were also a lot of people that were less happy. And that's why we pulled it from the market as well. It was the failure rate, though low, was still high in negative reviews. So the image, the damage it did to the brand was higher than the actual like net result
Mm.
the for the company. And it was very sad that we had to pull it back because there were so many people. Over 94% of the people were happy, which means 6% were unhappy. We wanted to make sure that the next one would be even
Yeah.
better. So as to bridge to the next point, which is the future, there's two products that we're working on, three, but the third one, well, that'll come later. Is the first is Fuzzy. That one's out. So PenTips Fuzzy we launched as a beta product. That one's the first product that's made in the Netherlands. That's very
Wow.
interesting for us as well. Yeah, we're trying to see how we can make it more closer to home, but also make sure that the quality is consistent. Something some people don't know is that every single tip gets shipped out from the office, like 5 meters away from where we are now, and every single chip is checked for defects, damages, dents inside of it with like a big magnifying glass before it's put into a box and left. And
Wow.
we want to make sure we can keep that quality, so we wanted to see what we could build here. And we're using an interesting type of technology that's not made for our industry, but it's made for a much larger industry to get a very bristle-like feeling on the fuzzy. And we launched it a couple weeks ago, and we launched just a handful of sets for free to just random people to get some feedback on it. And we
I
expect to get
missed
that out
that
next.
email. I missed that
Yeah.
email. I looked at my email and I'd clicked the link and it was already gone. And I was like, no.
Right.
Let's see. Maybe we have a couple lying around.
Hmm.
Nice, nice.
Yeah. It's the first feedbacks are good. I think there's still a couple of things we need to work on, but I hope that's a product we get to launch again soon. It has a really unique feel. And then we're also working on another one and also built in the Netherlands this time, and that's going to be PenTips 3.
Ooh,
Yes,
very cool.
and that's the one I'm here. It's aesthetically not any different than PenTips 2. The material change is insane. There's a lot of
Really?
time that went. Yeah, we really, really think that this is the one that's also going to be able to handle the durability. And to test that, we have two handwriting robots here that I also use for
Wow.
other practices, but we have two robots that are almost day and night just making strokes. We're
Wow.
counting it in Procreate. We're taking snapshots of it with a camera every few seconds, capturing it in the database to inspect what time and after how many strokes does it start to deteriorate, if at all. We have so many prototypes to get this right, but we're really, really excited to see what the response is when this product is out. We're getting
That's
very close.
amazing. That is
Yes.
amazing. I didn't. You never realize quite how much is going on behind
No.
the scenes with all of these types of products, and to hear a handwriting machine just going 24/7 is
It's
amazing.
sick. It's awesome. Yeah, we just really
Yeah,
wanted to make sure it's like, okay, that 6% of people, we don't need everyone to be a fan. There's always someone out there that won't be extremely happy with what we got, but let's at least try to build something most people will love
Yeah.
and that gets the excitement out of there that we hope to have achieved with PenTips 2. And now it's going to be built in the Netherlands. It's going to be good. So two new products, PenTips Fuzzy and PenTips 3. And this is the first time also that we're sharing anything about it
wow. Well,
besides
I appreciate
the
it.
emails. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a nice little exclusive. I appreciate that. That's cool. I didn't know. Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, PenTips 3, that's cool that you've already sort of moved to that next stage already. And I really appreciate the fact that, like you said, the feedback loop is so heavily integrated into then the revisions for the next one. And not only just, well, can we pick a sort of firmer, more sort of durable silicon anyway for the tips, but actually putting it to practice with the
Mm.
handwriting machine and just relentlessly testing it. One thing I've very much gained throughout the whole of this conversation is just how much the feedback is so critical in the product's life, and how much you really value it. That I really love that you take so much from the feedback to then want to create a better product going forward.
Yes, I'm glad you recognize it too. It's something that we've done since the beginning. We won't stop doing it either. My mailbox is always open for feedback too. I read every Trustpilot review. It's Yeah, and in fact, we now got to a point where just, I guess, last week we launched our new initiative, like a guarantee as well. Like if you're not 100% happy, you get a 100% refund. So it's
Wow.
like the stuff we're putting out, have been putting out, is absolutely great. Thank you for the patience on some of the things that we still needed to improve. But the stuff that's coming out in the future as well, it's going to have to cut the mark. Otherwise, you're going to get your money back because, yeah, the quality's got to be great.
And I think people don't always understand that, they look at the branding and they may see there's something similar that they might be able to get a slightly less cost. But I don't think people appreciate how much research and experimenting and reiterations have gone on in the background to these products, and how they are substantively kind of different than the alternatives. I think people like certainly go back to the sort of the days of the initial PenTips 1, when it was just the cover. It's like, well, you can get, thousands of different variations of tip covers out there, but they're not all the same. And, it's all to do with the feel, isn't it? And, it looks the same when you look at it on Amazon or wherever else, but it's in hand, the actual feel of it when you're actually using it is actually very different.
There's so much difference
Getting that
between
across,
all
isn't
of the
it, as well?
tips as well. Like, sorry, James, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
That's fine.
But there's so much difference in all of the tips with the feel. And I said this earlier about sort of the actual screen covers, and it's very hard to define the difference between and explain it to maybe someone not in our sort of space too much. But the difference between the tips, there is a big difference. I used the because I've got all of them. Bar the fuzzy, but I've got all of them, and the ink one on the pen mat, yeah, the ink tip that you've got on with the pen mat, the feedback from that one is it's almost like a fountain pen on a piece of paper. Like there's like a little, there's so much friction in a sense that it kind of jumps and it gives you that kind of jumping feeling. And for notes and writing, that would be an amazing sort of texture to feel all the time. But then there's such a difference between that and then just the pen tips too. And the silicone ones. My favorite is out of the tips is the fiber one, the little hood one that goes on the top. That's my favorite one out of the range.
So cool.
Yeah. I remember using the very first ones, like when I first started doing all of this, and it was so exciting just to like play with different accessories and stuff. You don't realize quite how many there are out there.
And for us specifically, so for the products that we have, we also noticed that customers were a bit lost on our website. You mentioned it in the beginning of the podcast as well, where in the middle of the conversation, where you're like, hey, you guys got a lot going on, and also it's great, and it also confuses people. So now we added a quiz. It seems really straightforward, but it uses it just matches the products with what you need. So if anybody, even yourselves, or if you know anybody who's a bit lost and like, okay, but where do I even start? And you don't even know where to advise them. Yeah, we have our PenTips quiz now, and that one has been pretty successful in advising people things that they like. We've been testing
We'll
it for
make
a
sure
month
to
now.
leave a link to it in the description down below so people can check that out. That would be awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Mark, this has been a fantastic interview. So much insight as well in terms of the patents as well. Just so much, it goes beyond what you think and you see in the shop front. The amount of works that go on behind. I urge you to make a behind the scenes video and just show how much goes on behind the scenes,
especially
so that people
robot
can see
writing.
how much.
We want to see that, don't we?
Yeah, that's a TikTok right there, or a reel or something. But yeah, it's so much that goes into it. Mark, we appreciate that you are a very busy man, so we will let you get back to the rest of your day.
Yeah,
thank you so much for joining us. We'll leave a link to all of your socials, of course, in the description down below.
Thank you again for this opportunity, James and Joel.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Thank you very much.
Chat soon.
That was such an awesome conversation with Mark. So much that goes into everything that you don't really realize on the sort of front of it.
Definitely. It was really fascinating to learn about the technology and all the way of researching and just testing out their products before they release it. And also really interesting to hear how they respond to feedback from their customers and how much it is at the top of their priority. I mean, you obviously hope that companies have quality control and care about their products and the customer, but to hear behind the scenes just how much goes into that is really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Hearing that the handwriting machine and that it's just constantly working 24/7. It's just amazing. It's the levels that you don't really realize are happening. Like I said, on sort of you think it's just a website they're just selling products, but the amount of work that goes in behind it's a lot like Loads of Spaces, isn't it? The work that goes into our tutorials before they even hit YouTube. Every space, there's so much that goes into it at the very early stages, and a lot of time you only see sort of the finished result, don't you? Fascinating. And again, like you said, to see the level that they go to digest the patents as well ahead of time, way ahead of time. I remember hearing about that tip that was going to be able to select a color using the tip ages ago, and I thought it was just someone's sort of pipe dream. But to hear that is, potentially a pattern as well. It's just amazing, and the attention to that to make sure that you are right at the front every single time, making sure you're kind of almost ahead of it, is really fascinating.
It would make me nervous to know that your company was attached to Apple's changes, and at the mercy of whatever they do in the future. But he seems to have a good handle on, the direction and what they can do. So it's be really interesting to see the new products that come out from them, and hopefully get hands on them and test the new things coming down the line as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just fantastic for us to just have another deep dive episode. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive with Marc. I've truly found it fascinating. If there's anybody else that you'd like us to have on the show, let us know in the comments down below as well. And let us know what you thought of the whole story of PenTips. Was there anything that grabbed your attention in the interview? As always, make sure to follow us on all our socials as well. And of course, subscribe to the channel for weekly episodes. We'll see you again next week. James, thank you, mate, for another fantastic episode.
Thank you, man.
And we'll see you in the next one.